first time I heard Haley speak, I was wrist deep in a broken Keurig machine, fishing out a pod someone jammed in backward like they were trying to teach it a lesson. She waltzed into the floor with a yoo-hoo that made three grown men in sales physically wince. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. I knew that was the new blood. I was still drying my hands when she called her first team meeting in the fishbowl. I had barely enough time to log off my terminal and pretend to care. She clicked her heels over to the front of the glass room and wrote in purple expo marker, Day 1 Energy, with a heart over the exclamation point. I wish I were kidding. 8 years. That's how long I'd been the quiet force behind our crown jewel account, Vance Industries. A contract so old it was faxed in. They brought in enough recurring revenue to pay half the damn payroll. Yet most folks thought the CEO secured the relationship. The truth, I was the invisible scaffolding. I handled everything: renewals, escalations, procurement freakouts, 2 mergers, and 1 data breach that would have tanked us if I hadn't caught the malformed token embedded in the third-party audit file. But I didn't wave flags. I didn't play Office Survivor. I just made it work. Every time the CEO mentioned his relationship with Mr. Vance, I'd smile and nod and keep my mouth shut. Vance didn't like middlemen. Hell, he barely tolerated legal. What he did like was results, and I gave him those, quietly, cleanly, and always early. Now here's where I pause just a second. I know you're probably halfway through your shift, earbuds in, pretending that spreadsheet is open for a reason. So if you like where this story's going, and trust me it goes, smash that like and hit subscribe. 90% of you don't. Notice, it helps the team a lot. Thanks. Back to the story. The first time I heard from Mr. Vance directly was on a Wednesday. Not a special day, just gray skies and a broken air purifier. I had fixed an API disaster that threatened to delay one of his logistics projects. No one else even knew it was happening. An hour after the fix, I got a letter. A letter, handwritten, cream stationery. Just one sentence: if they ever get cute with this account, call me directly. Signed V. That was 3 years ago. I tucked it into a folder in my desk drawer labeled Hail Marys. I never thought I'd use it. I figured people like me didn't get moments like that. We hold things up. We don't blow things up. By year 8, I started feeling it. That low simmer of burnout, the kind that makes your coffee taste like regret and your weekends feel like guilt. I wasn't even sure what I was holding out for anymore. Promotions had passed me like Amazon trucks in the night. Recognition? A joke. Once I had saved the company 6 figures on a renegotiated procurement clause and got a $25 Starbucks card that had been pre-scratched. They didn't even write my name on the envelope, but I stayed because Vance Industries mattered. Because deep down, I still believed in doing something well, even if no one clapped. That changed the day Haley walked in. I should have seen it coming. Whispers, the new corner office being prepped. The fact that the CEO was randomly wearing cologne on Tuesdays. It all added up to something, just not something I had the energy to decode. When she finally got up and introduced herself as Director of Strategic Growth, I felt the floor shift under me. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Not a thanks to Sophia for her years managing the Vance account or a nod to continuity. Just vibes and linked in buzzwords. And that purple marker. I sat through the meeting, took notes like a good soldier, smiled, said nothing. And then, after everyone filed out, she tapped me on the shoulder like a hostess calling a diner about to be removed from the booth. You're out, she said brightly. No hard feelings, it's just business. No warning, no email, not even the decency of a fake one-on-one. Just a laminated badge, a courier envelope, and a condescending smirk. My fingers went cold. Not angry, not sad, just cold, like my brain was insulating itself from a short circuit. Haley tilted her head and said, we just feel like we need someone who aligns more with the future of Zephyros. It's nothing personal. You're great at the old stuff. I nodded. She smiled, thinking I was taking it well. I walked out without a word. Back at my desk, HR was already waiting. The guy from IT was behind them, awkward and embarrassed, like a kid who just found his mom on OnlyFans. They asked me to sign the NDA. I didn't. Instead, I opened my drawer, pulled out the Hail Marys folder, and thumbed the edges until I found Vance's note. The paper was heavier than I remembered. I didn't call. I didn't text. But I did move it to my purse. And as I walked out, head high, badge surrendered, I heard Haley say to the project manager, don't worry, everything's in Salesforce. Spoiler, it wasn't. I didn't cry. Let's just get that out of the way. I didn't cry when I packed up my desk, carefully folding my notes on vendor integrations, client escalation charts, and the dozen handwritten birthday cards I kept from my old team. I didn't cry when I dropped my branded mug into the box and heard it crack. I didn't even cry when I passed the wall where they'd removed the employee of the quarter plaques last year because, quote, made things feel too hierarchical. I just felt clean. Hollow, yes, but clean, like something had been carved out that didn't belong anymore. The kicker? It wasn't even lunchtime. Haley had strutted in at 8:47 a.m. with her soy latte, a blazer that still had the tag string poking out, and an expression that screamed, Daddy says I'm a genius. By 9:03, I was restructured. That was the word HR used, restructured. Like I was a spreadsheet column they didn't want to scroll to anymore. The whole thing was so fast I half expected Ashton Kutcher to jump out of the supply closet yelling, punked. But no, just a condescending smile and an email from IT 30 seconds later. Subject, access terminated Sophia M. Body, per org update, your credentials have been revoked. Just business. What floored me wasn't the firing itself. It was how effortless it was for them, how little resistance the system gave before erasing 8 years. No review, no debrief, not even a paper card. A few folks tried to catch my eye as I left, most didn't. Self-preservation's a hell of a drug. Downstairs in the lobby, I sat for a moment under that fake ficus I always hated, watching the security guard pretend not to feel awkward. My box sat beside me like a tombstone. I pulled out my phone, stared at the contact labeled V, and hovered my thumb over the message field. Nothing came out. What was I going to say? Hi, remember me? They finally got cute. No, not yet, not like that. Upstairs, Haley was already clicking around Salesforce, shouting something about revenue verticalization and leveraging cross-functional stickiness. God help them. The Vance account wasn't in Salesforce, not really. The system had the invoices, sure, but the real notes, the context, the timing of Mr. Vance's quarterly retreats, his unspoken aversion to pre-sales engineers, his allergic reaction to buzzwords like synergy, that wasn't in any CRM, that was in me, and they just deleted it. The renewal pitch was 3 weeks out, and I knew they'd try to bluff their way through it. That's how these types work. Corporate theater. PowerPoint tap dance. Toss in a few Gartner graphs and hope the client's too polite to say, "This isn't what I paid for." They had no idea what was coming. The first week passed in a fog. I'd wake up at 6:15 like always, muscle memory dragging me to my closet before I remembered I didn't have anywhere to be. I'd pour my coffee, open my laptop, and stare at a screen that didn't lead anywhere. No inbox, no pinging alerts, just the faint echo of responsibility already fading. But the second week, that's when the focus came back. It started with a text from Miguel, our old procurement analyst. One line, "You didn't hear this from me, but they can't get into the config files." I didn't reply, just smirked. Then another text from Jen in operations. They scheduled the renewal call. Haley's calling it Operation Elevate. There's a 15-slide deck. It opens with a quote from Steve Jobs. That one made me laugh out loud. The kind of laugh that tastes like whiskey and resolve. Haley was going to walk into that call thinking she had it handled, thinking her last name was a free pass. But Vance wasn't some mid-tier vendor that needed ego fluffing. He was surgical. He once pulled a $3.4M contract from a firm because they used Comic Sans in a footer. Comic Sans. And unless they'd found a way to replicate me, my notes, my timing, my calm during chaos, they were about to learn what it meant to pitch blind. Meanwhile, I opened that Hail Mary folder again. There, behind Vance's letter, was something even more interesting. A scanned PDF I'd helped draft 2 years back, buried under a pile of compliance amendments no one ever cared about. Clause 4.3 Client Discretionary Representation Rights. I'd written it myself, at his request, with enough legalese to keep most eyes glazing. It gave Vance the right to reassign representation at will, without consulting Zephyro's leadership with effect as of notice timestamp. I remembered the phrase because I'd fought to keep it in. He wanted precision. Time zones, down to the minute. No one at Zephyro's had asked what that clause was. It went into a side letter. Vance filed it himself, not through legal. Now I started to wonder, had he been planning for this? Waiting? I flipped open my calendar. The renewal call was scheduled for Friday, 9 a.m. sharp, 3 weeks from the day I got the boot. Plenty of time to let them hang themselves, but not too long to forget. That night, I poured myself a drink, set the PDF on my kitchen table, and underlined one sentence with a red pen. The account is no longer yours as of 9:01 a.m. I signed nothing. HR tried the whole dance, soft voices, fake sympathy, the folder full of release forms stapled so neatly it looked like a catalog of surrender. Woman in charge wore one of those necklaces that spelled grateful in gold cursive. She slid the NDA across the table like it was a candlelit menu. "This is standard," she said, smiling like a hostage negotiator. "Just ensures a smooth transition. No hard feelings." I slid it right back with a smile of my own and said, "No signature." "No hard feelings either." She blinked. That wasn't in her playbook. They offered a severance package, but it came with strings. "Sign this." Don't say that. Pretend like the past 8 years were a warm summer camp and not a corporate minefield I navigated blindfolded while carrying everyone else's career on my back. I walked out with my head high and my mouth shut. There's a particular kind of rage that doesn't explode, it freezes. It calcifies, and mine had gone glacial. I wasn't going to rant. I wasn't going to call. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to watch. At home, I placed the box from my desk next to the couch and left it unopened. I made tea, sat with my silence, let the numbness harden into something cold and useful. I checked my phone again. Still no reply from V, just that empty thread. No bubbles, no dots, no signal. I started going through my work laptop, which I'd wiped clean just before IT could yank my access. You learn to prepare for betrayal in corporate America. It's just a matter of when, not if. The document I pulled up was labeled "If they try this." It was a living memo I'd kept over the years. Not a revenge plan, just a map, a memory aid. Notes on Vance's preferences, strategic concerns, pet peeves, travel dates, preferred phrasing in renewal emails, how he hated slides with more than 6 bullet points, his allergy to any phrase containing value prop, the time he asked to change project leads mid-flight because one of our guys chewed gum during a call. I knew Vance better than most people know their spouses. Not because I was special, because I listened. Meanwhile, back at Zephyros, they were panicking in polite corporate tones. I knew it because texts started trickling in from my old team. Miguel, trying to find the historical invoices. She said they are in Salesforce. They are not. Jen, Vance's EA, just declined a prep call. Said we'll talk during renewal. Haley's freaking. Nick from legal, yes, legal. Off the record, do you remember the billing model used for Q2 2021's overage clause? I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. Let the confusion simmer. Let the silence stretch. The truth was, they'd never understood the Vance account because they never understood the value of quiet work. To them, the client was just a number, a dashboard, a logo you slapped on a quarterly report. They forgot that a relationship like that doesn't live in spreadsheets, it lives in memory, in nuance. In the space between words on a call when Vance goes quiet, and you know it's because he didn't like what he just heard, and you pivot fast. Haley had no such radar. She had a degree, a punchy title, and the confidence of someone who'd never had to crawl through a server migration at 2 a.m. while a billion-dollar supply chain dangled by a thread. Word was she had her own pitch deck. Built it herself. Glossy, full of buzzwords. She even scheduled a pre-read session with the PM team and opened by saying, "Let's give them the new Zephyros experience." God bless her. The problem was, she thought she owned the client now, that you could inherit trust the way you inherit a country club membership. What she didn't understand was that Vance wasn't the type to tolerate substitutions. To him, account managers were like architects. You didn't just swap one mid-project and expect the building not to lean. He hadn't called me yet, and that worried me, because Vance, he was deliberate, calculated. The silence didn't mean apathy, it meant strategy. He was watching, too, gathering data, waiting for the inevitable fumble, and he was going to let them fumble. I pulled the folder closer. Inside were backup plans, templates I'd used over the years, escalation flows I'd diagrammed myself because the company's official playbook was 2 years out of date. I'd written my own incident response manual after a partner firm tried to sneak in unauthorized middleware and tanked the load balancer. No one cared at the time, but Vance had noticed. That's when he started calling me directly. I found a printed copy of the side letter I helped him draft. I read it again. Clause 4.3, still there, still ironclad. I set it down on the kitchen table and stared at it. The account is no longer yours as of 9:01 a.m. Still no reply from him. Fine, I'd stay silent, but when that clock hit 9:01, they'd hear everything. Haley called it her signature pivot. Phrase alone made me want to punch drywall. She was standing at the front of the boardroom, my old boardroom, with her MacBook glowing like a lighthouse of delusion, presenting slides titled Legacy Reimagined, The Zephyros Way Forward. That was slide 1. Slide 2 was a quote from Maya Angelou, followed immediately by a graph using Comic Sans. Vance would have already closed his laptop. They didn't know that, of course, because no one listened. Not when I was there, and certainly not now. The ops team had tried to speak up, bless their overworked, underpaid hearts. Miguel raised a hand during Haley's prep session and said, "Just FYI, Vance hates graphics that don't reflect operational data. He prefers actual workflows, not metaphors." Haley rolled her eyes and said, "Thanks, Miguel, but we're not in 2015 anymore." She then added a stock image of a handshake made out of puzzle pieces. The CEO was no help. He sat beside her, nodding like a bobblehead someone had prayed over. "Fresh eyes," he kept saying like that was a strategy. "Disruption is healthy. We've been stale too long." That's rich coming from a man whose only idea of risk was ordering oat milk at Starbucks. What they didn't get, what they couldn't get, was that Vance didn't want fresh. He wanted flawless. He didn't care how pretty the charts were. He cared whether the throughput in Q3 could sustain a 17% margin swing without tripping the vendor lock clauses. He wanted silence during his calls, punctuality to the second, and answers, real answers, when he asked, "How does this affect shipping latency?" That's why he worked with me. And that's why everything they were doing reeked of amateur hour. I knew all of this because Jen texted me again. They're practicing on Monday. She said she wants to build a narrative arc. We're doomed. Another message from procurement. Haley told us not to mention last year's incident with the customs delay. Vance asked about it twice last month. But the real comedy hit when the new project manager, poor guy named Riley, bless his khaki-covered soul, decided to take initiative and contact Vance's office for a pre-call touch base. I heard about it from Miguel, who watched it unfold. Riley dialed, introduced himself, got through 2 sentences before Vance's assistant said, "Please send all materials through formal channels. Mr. Vance is not currently accepting calls from Zephyros personnel." Click, no explanation, no warmth, just ice. That's when the team started whispering. Quietly at first, Slack pings, side chats in the break room. A few started wondering aloud, did Sophia take anything with her? Not in a malicious way, more like, wait, was she the one holding all this together? One engineer apparently joked, "This account feels like a Jenga tower missing the base blocks." No one laughed. Meanwhile, I watched it all unfold from a distance like a ghost at my own funeral. I kept to myself. I didn't respond to the messages. I didn't warn them, because that's the thing about silence, it gets heavy. People start projecting onto it, and in the vacuum, truth seeps out whether you speak it or not. The first week, they were cocky. By week 2, they were cautious. Now, heading into week 3, they were afraid, and Haley was doing what people like her always do when cornered, doubling down. She scheduled the renewal call for Friday. 9 a.m. sharp, told the room, "I've cracked it. We're going to lead with vision, then pivot to continuity. Then hit them with a bold roadmap. No numbers until the back half. Keep it high level, high level." Because nothing says confidence like withholding operational data from a man who once audited our licensing agreement mid-call. She sent out a meeting invite with a 5-page pre-read deck and a subject line that said, "Enterprise Renewal Strategy Vision 2030. Vance would see that and immediately suspect we'd been acquired by someone stupid. But none of them knew he'd already texted me. Just one line, no emojis, no explanation. "Don't reply. Just be ready, 9:01. I printed the text, taped it above my monitor. That was the moment everything clicked into place. The reason for the silence, the cold, calculating patience. He wasn't ignoring me, he was timing me. He wanted them to walk into that call fully unprepared, unaware, unarmed, and he wanted me ready the moment he pulled the trigger. I spent the rest of that week sharpening. Not literally, though the thought crossed my mind, but metaphorically. I prepped every document, every access credential he might need. Rebuilt my escalation playbooks from scratch. Resynced my client management tools. I was going to be invisible again, but not forgotten. Because when 9:01 struck, it would hit like a gavel. 2 years ago, Vance called me from an unlisted number while I was elbow deep in an Excel crash that had nuked all our margin projections. I remember the timing because I had 3 alerts going off. Someone from finance breathing down my neck about fiscal tags, and my lunch had just exploded in the break room microwave. Still, I picked up. Always did when it was him. He didn't waste time. "I want to draft a clause," he said. "Legal handles that," I replied without thinking. "Legal leaks," he said. "You don't." I paused. "I'm listening." He outlined it like a man drawing the last room in a bomb shelter, quietly, precisely, with the weary calm of someone who'd been let down too many times. He wanted language that gave him full discretion to reassign his account representation within Zephyros. At will, no explanation required. No veto rights from the C-suite. No delays. "Think of it like an escape hatch," he said. "If the clowns ever try to take the wheel, I want to pull the plug without asking for the wrench." I knew what he meant. Even back then, there were warning signs. Our CEO was already outsourcing strategic decisions to whatever consultant came with the flashiest deck. There was a revolving door of middle managers who treated enterprise clients like fast food orders, and I had to explain to a new director why locking a client into a tiered SLA without failover options was a bad thing. I ghost-wrote the clause that night at home. Drafted it in clean, sterile legalese, no frills, no fluff. Just power, buried like a fuse line in a concrete wall. Clause 4.3, Reassignment Rights. Client retains the irrevocable right to assign, reassign, or otherwise designate any account representative of their choosing within the provider organization, at will and without provider pre-approval. Notice of reassignment may be given at any time, in writing, and shall be effective immediately upon delivery timestamp. I didn't mention it to anyone. I emailed it directly to him with a single line, "Here's your wrench." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. 3 days later, I got a thank you card in the mail, cream envelope, no return address. Inside, in his precise handwriting, "Good operators build roads, great ones build exits." He had filed it himself through his own legal team as a side letter. It never touched our internal compliance systems. No one at Zephyros even knew it existed. Until now. Present day, Thursday night. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the final draft of their renewal deck open on one screen, courtesy of Jen, who had no idea how to sit on her hands when chaos was brewing. Haley's version was worse than I imagined. Slide 8 had a stock photo of an astronaut and the phrase charting new galaxies of collaboration. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. My phone buzzed. One line, "Don't reply, just be ready." 9:01. No name, no context. But I knew the tone, knew the timing. He was going to pull the pin. I stared at the screen for a long moment, letting the gravity settle in. The air in the room felt different, like before a thunderstorm. I felt it in my teeth. I didn't reply. Instead, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the printed side letter. I had highlighted clause 4.3 in neon pink. Vance hated yellow highlighters, said they looked juvenile. I ran my fingers over the paper, its weight heavier than anything digital ever could be. This was more than just a legal trigger. It was a scalpel, sharpened and sheathed for this exact moment. Haley had no idea what was coming. She thought she was going to lead the renewal call. Thought her last name was enough to muscle through client trust like it was a gym door. She had built a house on a foundation she didn't understand. Vance was about to pull the cornerstone out with surgical precision. And me, I was going back in, not as an employee, not as an asset to be restructured, but as the only person Vance trusted with the keys. I booted up my secure laptop, reopened my onboarding materials from years back, refreshed my client-side dashboards, re-authenticated my access to his sandbox network. The credentials still worked. Of course they did. Vance didn't believe in deleting people, only repositioning them. I set a calendar alert. Friday 9:01 a.m. be ready. I didn't know exactly how it would go down, whether he'd drop the clause mid-call or if the legal notice would hit their inbox like a meteor. But I knew one thing, he wasn't bluffing. And when he spoke next, every suit in that boardroom was going to remember the cost of forgetting who actually signs the checks. This wasn't a comeback, it was a controlled detonation. The call started like every other hollow presentation I'd sat through at Zephyros, 10 seconds of awkward small talk, an overeager intern fumbling with the screen share, and then the sound of forced enthusiasm hitting polished wood veneer. "Good morning, everyone," Haley chirped, her voice sugar-drenched and 3 octaves higher than usual. "We're thrilled to walk you through our vision for the next phase of partnership." I was watching from my laptop at home, muted, camera off, dressed in sweatpants and sipping coffee from a chipped mug that still had a Zephyros logo peeling off the side. Poetic. Haley clicked to the first slide. A firework animation launched over the words Reimagining Enterprise Synergy. My jaw locked. Enterprise Synergy. The man had once docked a vendor $100K for using the phrase digital enablement. This was corporate malpractice. The CEO joined a few minutes in mid-slide. His voice slid into the conversation like an old oil leak, slow, slick, and unnecessary. "Good to see you all. I just want to say how excited we are about continuing this legacy relationship. It's been a cornerstone of Zephyros' growth, and Haley here is our future." I saw Vance's square in the corner. No mic on, no video, just the initials V in a charcoal gray circle, as still and ominous as a loaded revolver on a poker table. Haley blazed forward, blissfully unaware. She made it to slide 4, some nonsense about transformational alignment and stakeholder velocity, before deciding it was time to name-drop the relationship. "And we really believe that our ongoing relationship with Vance Industries is one of mutual evolution and embedded trust." That's when it happened. A flicker in the screen. A soft unmute chime. Vance spoke. Calm, precise. No theatrics, just gravity. "My side letter gives me reassignment rights. The account is no longer yours as of 9:01 a.m. Silence, dead, surgical silence, like a gunshot in a library. I watched Haley's face freeze, her smile calcifying into something grotesque, her lips parting just slightly like she was about to say wait, but her vocal cords gave up. Her eyes darted off-screen, probably toward her dad. The CEO, for his part, stared downward like he'd just realized the floor had opened up beneath his feet. I checked the clock. 9:01, exactly. Vance didn't speak again, didn't have to. He clicked off his mic and let the words sit there, aging like radioactive waste. Haley tried to recover. You could see her fingers moving, scrolling, searching for the next slide, any slide, something, anything, to plug the hole now gaping in the center of the call. If I could just," she stammered. "I think there may be a misunderstanding," her voice cracked. She looked at the CEO. He was still frozen, his jaw slightly slack, eyes empty like a man who'd just watched someone burn his will on live TV. Vance's legal team, now visible in the call participants list, hadn't spoken yet. Their presence was the warning shot. The silence after was the ricochet. Then, a chime. Inbox ping. Haley glanced at another screen, so did the CEO. Everyone else stayed silent, staring down into the digital abyss. I had already opened the document. Subject, formal reassignment Vance Holdings to, Zephyros Executive Leadership CC, legal at Vance Holdings attachment, client representative designation PDF. The body, 1 line. As of 9:01 a.m. today, Sophia M. is the exclusive designated liaison for all Vance Holdings accounts. No warm regards, no explanation, just fact. The kind of fact that lands like a piano from 10 stories up. Haley's face lost what little color it had left. She tried again. "I think maybe we could revisit the parameters of the letter." I wasn't aware of any active clause, and just like that, the CEO finally moved, snapped out of his stupor. But not with reassurance, not with support. He turned to her on camera, visibly flustered, and asked, "You did run this through legal, right?" Look she gave him in that moment, like a kid caught shoplifting in church, said it all. "No," she whispered. "It was filed externally. I didn't see it." Another inbox ping. Legal from Vance replied all. "The clause is valid, enforceable, timestamped. No further communication through Zephyros will be acknowledged." Miguel, bless his soul, had turned off his camera 20 seconds earlier. I imagined him in his chair, hands over his mouth, watching the world burn. And me. I sat back, crossed one leg over the other, and let the silence do the work. The fallout had begun. The sound that came next wasn't audible, not really. It was the collective unraveling of a building's worth of egos, thread by thread, credential by credential, as the reality of what just landed in their inbox began to sink in. Subject, formal reassignment Vance Holdings from, Vance Legal at Vance Holdings to, CEO at Zephyros Systems Haley at Zephyros Systems legal@zephyrosystemscom. CC, compliance at Vancy Holdings.com, contracts at Vancy Holdings.com attachment. Vance Sophia reassignment agreement PDF 1 attachment. 2 pages. Inside it was a simple statement, bulletproof in tone and legally airlocked. Effective immediately as of 9:01 a.m., Sophia M. is the sole designated liaison and strategic consultant of record for all communications, negotiations, and contract renewals between Vance Holdings and Zephyros Systems. All prior representation is hereby considered null and void. All interactions moving forward are to be conducted exclusively through the liaison's designated independent consultancy, per agreement terms. Below that, my name, my LLC, my consulting firm's logo, just something I whipped up last year on a whim, mostly to secure a better rate for a freelance side project. Little Phoenix in grayscale. Fitting, my personal inbox pinged. From Vance Executive at Vancy Holdings.com subject. Contract enclosed attachment. Sophia Consulting Retainer 2024. PDF I opened it, pulse steady. Monthly retainer. Fixed 6-month term. Clause for annual renewal. Triple my former salary. No internal meetings unless requested. Full autonomy to loop in vendors. Full indemnity. Authority to override internal Zephyros personnel on matters related to fulfillment. It was gorgeous. I clicked download, then stood up and let the silence of my apartment settle around me. In the corner, my old Zephyros laptop, now wiped, locked out, and mostly collecting dust, sat like a retired soldier watching the new army fumble their weapons. Back in the boardroom, virtual and otherwise, the tremors were spreading. Jen sent me a screenshot. Haley had muted herself and turned off her video. The CEO sat rigid, eyes darting across the screen as though he were searching for an emergency escape hatch that didn't exist. Legal was talking in low tones. The body language said it all. Damage control had just entered the group chat. Then came the final act of realization. Slack. Zephyros's internal Slack lit up like a fireworks finale. Hash Enterprise Sales Miguel. Holy shit. Riley, the new PM? Wait, Sophia's back? Jen, she never left. Read the damn clause. Someone from marketing, so do we still present the roadmap deck? A sales director, delete. Everything. The panic was delicious. Then came the real twist. Sophia was no longer in the company directory, but now she was in the vendor directory, listed under Strategic Enterprise Oversight External. They'd have to approve her invoices now, process her payments, loop her into meetings with deferential tones, and pray she didn't bill for every awkward silence. And every single one of them knew, somewhere deep down in the pit of their overinflated guts, that I had let this happen. Let them walk me out. Let them spin up their pitch decks and parrot their jargon. I had stayed quiet, not out of weakness, out of calculus. Because Vance had told me 2 years ago in his clean penmanship and terrifying foresight, if they ever get cute. Want you ready? I was ready, they weren't. Haley hadn't reappeared on the call. Her square was still dark, camera off, mic muted. She probably hadn't even processed the fact that the clause didn't just remove her from the account, it removed her. Vance's language wasn't poetic, it was surgical. All prior representation is hereby considered null and void. That wasn't a demotion, that was erasure. The CEO finally cleared his throat. Well, he said, to no one in particular. I guess we'll need to reevaluate our structure moving forward. Someone, legal maybe, mumbled something about compliance with external oversight. There were stutters, shifting eyes, a quiet vacuum of power filling with paperwork and shame. Then came the internal calendar invite. Subject, Strategic Realignment Mandatory Leadership Meeting Time, 12:30 p.m. Attendees. CEO, Haley, Legal. HR location, conf room B/Zoom link. I didn't need to be on that call. I already knew the agenda. I opened the contract Vance had sent, signed it digitally, and returned it with one line, effective immediately. Then I poured another coffee. I had a 1:00 p.m. alignment session to prep for with Vance's ops lead. Let them chew on that. Haley reappeared on the call 20 minutes later, face pale, hair slightly frazzled, like someone had tried to Photoshop confidence back into her and failed halfway through rendering. Her camera was back on, but her smile was gone, replaced by that high-strung look of someone furiously Googling how to undo a war crime with a PowerPoint. The CEO had muted himself after the formal reassignment came through. Now he was unmuted and pacing in the background, partially off camera. You could hear the frantic clicks of his mouse, occasional whisper to someone just outside frame. Finally, he spoke. Fix it. That was all he said to her, 2 words, like she could just slap a fresh coat of spin on the train wreck and make it look like a detour. Haley nodded quickly, too quickly, then ended the call. I wasn't on what happened next, but the aftermath bled through the channels like a burst pipe. She called Vance directly, cell number, after hours, violation of multiple understood norms. He didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, rambling, apologetic, desperate. He responded with silence. Then she tried legal, tried to make it sound like a misunderstanding, a hasty clause. Surely it's not enforceable if it wasn't cleared internally, she said. Zephyros Legal looked up the document finally, found the signature trail, found the timestamp, found the external filing and compliance match via Vance Holdings. It's enforceable, they told her. Flat tone. no sympathy. And it's binding. That's when she realized she wasn't negotiating anymore. She was litigating gravity. By the time the board got wind of the fallout, it was already too late. Vance had pulled more than just the account. He'd pulled visibility, future roadmap access, technical documentation, projected spend forecasts, all yanked like a plug from the wall. He'd stopped replying to anyone from Zephyros unless the subject line included my name. One of the board members reportedly asked, "Why didn't we know about this clause?" Someone else said, "Why didn't we stop her from touching the renewal?" Then came the nuclear part of the fallout, the optics. Our cornerstone client gone, our golden renewal scrapped. The CEO's daughter exposed. Not just a mistake, a liability. A nepotism disaster now baked into the company's largest account loss in over a decade. Someone in PR actually used the phrase narrative crisis. Meanwhile, I was on my second espresso and reviewing the handover notes from Vance's technical team. Everything was running clean. No blockers, no bottlenecks. They'd set up a new secured Slack channel labeled Sophia Direct and sent access to me, and only me. That's when HR reached out. I recognized the name. They'd been the one to hand me my NDA papers a few weeks ago, back when they thought I was just a quiet redundancy to be boxed and logged. Their email subject line made me laugh. Subject: Opportunity for re-engagement urgent, body. Hi Sophia, in light of recent developments, we'd love to explore the possibility of re-engaging your expertise in a contract capacity to help stabilize the Vance relationship and provide guidance to our internal team during this transition period. Please let us know if you're open to discussing details. Kind regards, Angela's senior people ops partner. I didn't reply by email. Instead, I forwarded them the executed contract. From me at sofiaconsulting.com to HR@zephyrossystems.com subject. Opportunity for re-engagement. Hi Angela, check your inbox, I already have. Regards, Sophia. I never got a response, but I did get access logs showing Zephyros' internal IT team attempting to download copies of my old account documentation from the shared drive I once managed. They couldn't access any of it. Vance's IT had already deauthorized their credentials. It was over. Haley, as I later heard, tried to salvage her position with a last-minute internal strategy deck, called it Path Forward, Realigning Enterprise Trust. She presented it to the board the next morning. 7 slides in, someone interrupted her and said, "We're not moving forward, we're cleaning up." She was told to take the rest of the week off, and the week after, and every week after that. HR quietly updated her status to advisor on leave. Her keycard was deactivated by the end of that day. As for me, my next call with Vance was at 10:15. We reviewed rollout pacing for the next 2 quarters, discussed vendor assessments, and mapped cross-functional capacity. At the end of the call, he asked if I needed anything. I said, "Just clarity." He replied, "You earned it." I ended the call and stared at the screen, feeling still. Not triumphant, not smug, just resolved. They thought firing me was a strategy. It turned out it was a handoff. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Not the air temperature, though the HVAC still hummed like a dying lawnmower, but the atmosphere. No smiles, no idle chatter. No Haley giggling about team vibes or the CEO glad-handing some investor over gluten-free croissants. Just quiet, tense, like the walls themselves were waiting to see who'd crack first. I walked in at exactly 10 o'clock a.m., not a second early, not a second late. I wasn't wearing a badge, didn't need one. I was escorted by Vance's head of client security, a man built like a vending machine who held the door for me with a nod. The kind of nod that said, "You're not here to negotiate." On the table, a copy of the reassignment letter, printed on Vance Holdings letterhead. Initialed, signed, notarized, in my hand, a thinner folder, just 1 page, my consulting contract with them, the one Zephyros tried to recreate after the explosion. The one I'd already signed and returned, the one with authorized oversight printed across the top in bold. The CEO stood when I entered. That told me everything I needed to know. I took the open seat at the table. Across from me, Haley sat with her shoulders tight, arms crossed like she was trying to shrink herself into her own blazer. She hadn't said a word, hadn't met my eyes. Her lip twitched once, some rogue emotion trying to escape, but she swallowed it. The CEO cleared his throat. "Sophia, thank you for making time. I know this transition has been unexpected." I slid the letter across the table. "I'm not here for time," I said. "I'm here for clarity." Before he could respond, the screen behind them lit up. The conference monitor chimed. "Incoming call." Vance Holdings. Haley's spine went stiff. The room fell silent. Vance appeared on screen. No background blur, no filters. Just him in his home office, reading glasses perched halfway down his nose like some academic hitman. He nodded once, then looked directly at me. "Sophia, thank you for stabilizing this relationship. Your diligence is the reason we're still invested." I nodded. "Appreciate the opportunity." He turned slightly to address the rest of the room. "Zephyros board members, I trust you've reviewed the reassignment documentation. Effective immediately, Sophia operates with full authority as external strategic liaison to all Vance Holdings accounts. I've also decided to annualize her retainer. We prefer stability." The word stability hit like a brick. Deliberate shot across the bow. He didn't say Haley's name, didn't need to. Then to me, you'll receive updated scope documents by end of day. Thank you again. The call ended just like that. No discussion, no questions, no fake apologies. The CEO looked at me like he wanted to say something conciliatory, some last gasp at saving face, but the moment passed, and I wasn't going to throw him a rope. Instead, I turned to them both, Haley and her father, and placed my final line with the kind of calm that only comes when you've already won. Next time you fire someone, I said, check which side of the table the client is sitting on. I stood. No papers gathered. No smiles given, just gravity. I left the room the way I'd arrived, alone, deliberate, already steps ahead. It wasn't revenge, it was maintenance. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.